happens during a game, because they've developed, or they've claimed an ownership of not just the team, but of the game itself. And it's claiming that ownership of the game that I think is missing in a lot of our youth sport experiences. If you go into other countries where they don't have as much organization as we do, I've been doing a lot of work in Brazil. You know, kids are playing on very small fields with soccer, for example. They're making up their own games. They're developing their own rules. And yeah, they have disagreements and arguments, but they know that unless they solve those conflicts and disagreements, that the game isn't going to continue. So they then start identifying with one another in ways that don't happen when a coach is calling all the shots. The other trick is, when it comes to repetition, obviously repetition is important for learning a skill. But if you can hide repetition into certain forms of play where the kids don't even know that they're repeating, then that's an important skill to have as a coach. So structuring play into our practices is crucial.
You know, Lori, your colleague Mary Fry, who spent 3 days with Positive Coaching at our trainer institute this summer, introduced a term that I had not heard before, a team pact. And she did this, I think, with 10-year-olds. And she asked them what kind of a team they wanted to have, what they wanted to do. And you cannot believe that these came from 10-year-olds. The list of, you know, they wanted to support each other, they wanted to, you know, when somebody made a mistake, they wanted to support them, etc. It's just beautiful. And I would just add one thing to what you said about the coach who talks about what went well and what didn't, and then turns it over. We suggested coaches talk last, that you have typically something like a winner's circle where everybody, the floor is open, everybody can talk about what went well in the game, and then a coach can make sure that every kid gets recognized, that some kids weren't, and then can add in some things, but having the kids themselves speak first, I think is really great. Do we have any other questions here? Yeah, right up here and then way in the back.
So one issue that we're seeing from youth soccer coaches, and I'm at fault for this, I will admit this, is when we're on the sidelines during the game, we're giving a lot of instruction and we're talking a lot. And I see the coaches that have been doing it for 20 years, they're like, just sit down, read a book. How do you get there?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so, you know, I think I heard a term recently which I have used quite a bit lately. I heard a student talking about their coach joysticking them. And so I thought this is a great term, because this is exactly what's happening. Pass it, trap it, left, change it. You're just joysticking the student, and you're really denying them an opportunity to learn. You know, sports is about developing a growth mindset, and we have to grow. In order to grow, we have to fail, and we have to fail on our own. And so I think the thing that you have to just understand is this is a wonderful growing opportunity. And by talking or directing or joysticking, you're denying someone a growing opportunity, which is one of the wonderful things that we have in sport. You know, so I think if you start to think about it in those terms, you then realize you're just denying someone an opportunity. Number one. Number two, you're oftentimes interfering. You know, sometimes the coach will have a grander scheme in mind, and in any one moment as a coach or parent, you say, pass the ball forward. It might not integrate with the idea of possess the ball going backward, for example, and we wouldn't know that because we weren't in the coaching meeting necessarily. Or, you know, so that's something to also keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind, and this happened to my staff and me last Friday. We played at the University of Kansas. Fortunately, we won an overtime game there. But we had a student at the end of regulation who all three coaches, myself and my two assistants, were all saying something to her, and she just heard gobbledygook. And so all we did was interfere with, if we left her alone, she'd probably been fine. And then she came off the field right at the end of regulation, and one of the coaches kind of blew up, like, gosh darn it, blah, 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 blah. And she just said, I couldn't understand what any of you were saying. I felt so bad for her, you know, and we were absolutely at fault, but we're all getting excited, and it's just controlling your emotion, realizing we're part of our responsibility is to help students grow, and trying not to get in the way of that growing process by talking over them or through them.
So I had a question about this new trend that you see in youth sports in regards to everyone gets a trophy. How does that, what are your thoughts on that, and how does that play into positivity in sports and like this changing trend in youth sports and helping kids grow and develop these skills for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, there's a long literature in social psychology that says that if you wanted to motivate people, you try to create intrinsic reasons for doing something rather than providing extrinsic reasons for doing something. And I think that when it comes to sport, we should be emphasizing the joy, the pleasure of participation, and the intrinsic satisfaction of participation, associated with participation. I don't think that you need the trophies. I'm not going to, I think the argument that people have been having in the media is a little bit off the point. I think that it's important at the end of the season to do probably what Jerry does, you know, to write a note if you're a youth sport coach. Write a note on a special piece of paper directly to that individual rather than the same little trophy that ends up pretty meaningless in a lot of ways. So, but that note, my daughter still has a note that she got 30 years ago from a coach. And she's kept that because that was the most meaningful trophy that she ever achieved. So I would go with that rather than spending a lot of money on trophies. I think that we want to create intrinsic satisfaction.
I agree with that. I also think trophies are not anywhere near the top 10 problems with youth sports. And I would say, how many of you have been in a fun run, a 10K, or did you accept your participation t-shirt? Why should you get a t-shirt just for running if you didn't win it? I mean, I think it's a little bit of hypocrisy for adults saying kids shouldn't get a participation thing when, you know, I want that t-shirt. Other questions? Lynn, do you have a question?
Hi, my question was basically in youth sports, how do we develop a mindset to get some kids to not look at it as an aspect of becoming a professional athlete and look at the aspects of growth and opportunity and just growing as an individual and learning from the aspect of the sport as opposed to focusing on being the next LeBron James or what have you?
I guess I think listening to the athlete in terms of when they are engaged in the sport participation, as parents and coaches, finding out what it is that they're enjoying about the moment, right? And reinforcing those things. Because I think for a lot of kids, they just want to be active. They want to be involved. They want to be with their friends. They want to feel like they're developing skills. And so I think if we listen to what kids want and reinforcing that, I think that can help in some ways. I think that the media tends to play a role in this in the sense of what they emphasize. There was a recent study that's just done by NPR and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation where they asked parents about their expectation for their youth child in terms of sport, and something like 26% of those parents said that they thought that their athlete was going to go on to be in the professional leagues. When we know that it's less than, a percentage of those, so it's like something like 0.2% of all athletes. And so I think it's changing those messages in the media as well, as trying to listen to what it is that kids want.
I'm going to take a slightly different angle here. I think part of the wonderful opportunity we have here is to teach life skills through sport. And so I love that the kid wants to be LeBron James. And I'm going to really use that as a platform for teaching him about hard work, about focus, about discipline, about teamwork, about preparation, about healthy habits. So I love that the kid wants to be a professional athlete. The numbers say he probably won't be. We don't need to crush that today. Later on in life, he may or may not be a professional athlete. But let's use his desire to be a professional athlete as an opportunity to teach him wonderful things. Do you know how hard LeBron James works? Do you know how many sacrifices LeBron James makes? Do you know how he works hard to be a great teammate for his teammates? These are wonderful skills for anybody to learn that they can apply whether they become a professional athlete or not. So I would like to see us embrace the fact that someone wants to be the best at what they do and use that as an opportunity to teach them all the wonderful things that they're going to have to embrace in order to be the best at anything you do, even if someday you're not going to be a professional athlete.
Now, Jerry, earlier you talked about each of your players has 5 goals and you're always tweaking them.
Yep.
I think most people, adults, children, are really lousy at goal setting. And one of the life lessons you can learn from sports is how to set the right goal. So a kid says, I